something you say that I love is that you can't out Evan Evan. I want to know what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we have role models, we have mentors, and there's nothing wrong with it. I love it. I've learned a lot from the people in my life and people I've profiled on my channel. Uh, but it's easy to turn into imposter syndrome to feel like, well, I'm never going to be as good as whoever. Like you're here starting this podcast, and you might look at Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss or whoever you think is the best podcaster or interviewer out there. But the goal is never to be Joe Rogan. The goal is to be the best Samuel possible. And that is an evolution. And even at the beginning, if you start asking Joe Rogan questions, that's fine as a you're tasting and testing and getting started. But we're always so worried about chasing our competition, where really the goal should be to be the best us. And so nobody can out Evan, nobody can out Samuel. And so when people will often share videos with me to say, oh, look, this person copied your style. This person is doing exactly what you're doing. It's like, oh, that's cool. Like, you're not going to out me. So if you're just going to be a Elvis impersonator, great. Like, keep doing you. But ultimately, everybody needs to find their own path. So I think so many times we're worried about the rearview mirror and what's happening behind us, as opposed to forging our own path to say, okay, how am I going to be unique? What do I love doing that other people don't? And going all in on that thing.
Love that. So how can someone find like their you can say unique gift and the thing that they do better than other people?
So I start with purpose, and I think your purpose comes from your pain. So whatever you struggled the most with is what you want to help other people through. So I struggled so much as an entrepreneur and getting my first business off the ground and quitting and having $300 a month and all this stuff. And so I just want to try to make the road a little bit easier for other entrepreneurs to not have to struggle as much as I did. And there's so many great causes in the world, but what's the one that you're going to want to commit to? Well, it's the one that you feel most connected to. If you don't care about entrepreneurs, then cool, don't worry about entrepreneurs. Focus on the thing that you care about the most. So that's where I think everybody needs to start is with purpose. Because if you woke up and felt like you're going to do something today that matters because it's serving somebody else, you're much more likely to stay consistent. I've done what year is it? 2023. I've started in 2009. So it's been a lot of making videos over the years. Why do I stay consistent? Well, because I still feel connected to the purpose of what I'm doing. So inside that, then, how do you find your unique gifts? A lot of it is exploration. We get these ideas, and most people are in the no business. Most people are saying why they can't do something. Where I try to flip it and say, okay, I got this idea for a reason. I should say yes and at least give it a shot, at least once. As long as you're not hurting somebody, it's against your ethical values, whatever. But saying at least once, because even for you starting this show, how long did you want to start the show before you actually started the show?
Honestly, I wasn't really too sure if I want to start it or not, and I was just thinking like it would be so cool to start a podcast. So I just went to the store, got some mics, and then started it up.
But from the idea, the very first time you got the idea to when you actually released your first episode, how long was it?
About a week or two.
That's great, dude. That's awesome. Because most people, that week or two is like a decade or two. They just take forever to think, and just never do. And you'll never know by just sitting on the couch. And so most people are in the no business, where what you want to do is what you did. And you don't even necessarily need to go to the store and buy anything. You
Yeah.
could start a podcast from your computer. You could start a podcast from your phone. You don't have to go out and spend a ton of money buying gear to start something. Not that you bought, high-end gear or anything else, but a lot of these ideas we can start pretty simply and pretty easily on our own. And you're probably going to suck at the beginning anyway, right? So your first episode probably sucked. Great, keep going. And each one gets a little bit better. You can't just get up on a pair of skis and go down the hill, right? You're going to fall down a whole bunch of times, but every time gets a little bit better. And the thing to pay attention to is, did you enjoy the process? It's like, okay, I sucked at that. That was terrible, but was it fun? Because if it's fun, I know I can get better at it because it's just a skill that I'm missing. And so for anything that you want to get into, you didn't go to school for podcasting. You didn't go to school for interviewing. It's not probably what your parents did, unless it was, but probably not. And so like, who are you to start a podcast, right? Like what makes you think, Samuel, that you could be the next podcast host? That's what a lot of people will say, and that's what we often tell ourselves. And instead of listening to that voice that's being in a no business, say, "Oh, I don't know, I'm just going to give it a shot and see what happens. And if I love it, I can get better at anything. It's just a skill. And how do you get better at a skill? Well, you practice and you get mentorship. And so just flipping from being in a no business to being in the yes business makes a huge difference.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's such an important mindset to have, because like 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 you said before, so many people they just think for so long, and then if they spend that time that they spent thinking, doing, then they'd be so much farther along, even if the action they took wasn't perfect or anything. So, something that I really want to bring up with you is your goal to hit 35 million subscribers. I think that's that's really cool to see, because I don't think anyone in the self improvement space has done that before. So I really want to ask you, like, what's your mindset like for achieving that goal? Like, what changes did you have to make to your mindset?
So this idea came from Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. They co-authored a
Yeah,
book called 10x is easier than 2x, and they're both friends, and I got to spend time with both of them. And after reading the book and hanging out with them, it's okay. Well, let's do it. Let's 10x our goal. And I had 3.5 million subscribers at the time. I said, okay, let's go to 35. And the goal isn't necessarily the goal. The goal is who you become in the process of achieving the goal. And so what I learned from them that was really helpful is it's as you scale and grow, it's what you need to stop doing more than what you need to start doing.
yeah,
So if you want to grow by that much, you need to stop doing 80% of the things that you're currently doing. And that means cutting off a lot of things that you're currently doing that are yielding small results. It's the classic good is the enemy of great. Like what you're doing is good and it's getting some results. And so you want to keep doing it. But if you keep doing these small things, you'll never do the big thing. And so every major growth that you have is letting go of some of the small things and leaning in on something much bigger. One of the first big transformations I had was around email. So when I was a young entrepreneur, I was known for responding to email really quickly.
yeah.
I got the alert and then right away respond to an email. A new email came in, boom, like a second later, I'm responding. And people then said, wow, you're so fast on email. This is great. And so that reinforced me wanting to be fast on email. I started to build this identity as this guy who was fast on email. But then what ended up happening, I realized, was every time I answered an email and that notification came in, I had to stop what I was doing to then focus on this email. And I ended up getting a lot of small things done, which was these emails throughout the day, but never any big thing. Because as I started doing deeper work and working on bigger projects, I kept getting distracted by this new email that came in. So I had to say, I'm going to stop responding to email so quickly. It's an identity shift. Now I'm not getting the praise for being so fast on email. Now, if you send me an email, it's usually within 24 hours that I'll give you a reply, which is still, I think, socially acceptable, but not what I was doing before. But what that does is allow me to be able to do bigger things. It allows me to make better content, it allows me to do bigger partnerships. It frees up my mental energy to work on something much larger. And so if something was bad and you hated it, it's easy to let that go. The challenge is letting go of the things that are good but not great. And another friend of mine, Joe Polish, says, be willing to destroy anything that isn't excellent in your life. And so if you looked at your life and the things that you're doing, what is excellent or has the capability to become excellent? And then how many of those things are you doing? And chances are you've got these big ideas, but you're distracted too much and spending too much time on small ideas. And so it's less about what you're going to do and more about what you're going to start to let go of, because that's who you used to be. And to make the next 10x jump, you have to embrace this new version of yourself.
Yeah, you're right. So, how does someone figure out which actions they should stop doing and then wish they should do more of? Because I think for a lot of people, it's pretty hard to tell the difference between the two.
I think once you have a big goal, it ends up becoming a lot more clear. So if you think about What's a giant goal for you? Like if you had to pick a 10x goal for you, what would that be right now for you, Samuel?
I think grow the podcast to 10,000 downloads.
10,000 downloads. Okay, great. So are you at 1,000 downloads now?
A bit less.
Okay, cool. So it's more than 10x goal. Great. So if you think about how you spend your day, and the podcast isn't the only thing that you have to worry about, right? You got family and you have to eat and sleep and work or school or whatever, right? Like there's stuff that has to get done throughout the day. But in terms of the activities that you're spending on the podcast, if you had to think about how do I get to 10,000 downloads, what are some of the bigger ideas that you have to get there?
I think getting bigger guests on like you, of course. That's definitely one. And I think just not kind of like what you're saying, just not really focusing on like the super small tasks. Just like being clear on which tasks actually which tasks actually get me there, like inviting guests, making questions, doing the podcast, and like editing it, but then not really doing anything else.
So, how much time, if the number one thing you have to do is go get bigger guests for your show, how much time are you spending in a week to reach out to bigger guests?
Probably like 3 or 4 hours.
Great. So, that's pretty good. Now, if that was 12 hours a week, you're probably going to get a lot more bigger guests. But to make it 12 hours a week instead of, 3 to 4, you got to let go of other work.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other things that you're doing that if you just run it through the filter of, I want to get to 10,000 downloads, and the biggest way to get there is to bring on bigger guests, then all the stuff you're doing for the podcast, how much of it is actually leading to you getting bigger guests or not? And if the answer is no, then it's either eliminating that thing, automating that thing, or delegating that thing so you can focus your energy on going to get bigger guests. Most of us are just not spending enough time on the thing that matters the most. So if this is your number one most important thing to do, how many hours are there in a week? And you're spending 3 to 4 of them on it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing that needs, like, you're spending like half an hour a day doing this. And if it's your number one thing, then we need to be spending like 3 hours a day doing this. But you don't just magically have 2.5 extra hours to do this, which means you have to get rid of some other things. I'm sure you could be a little more productive in areas, and you could if you wanted to, but you probably have to cut some things out. And that's where it's hard, because cutting things out that yield small rewards, if you're fishing and you're catching no fish, it's easy to stop. But if you're catching little fish, it's easy to just keep eating those little fish. But in eating the little fish, you never go for the big fish. And so
Exactly. Yeah.
that becomes a challenge. And so, but having the bigger goal helps narrow those things in a little more. So if you know that you need to go book bigger guests and you're only spending half an hour a day doing it, how do I spend 3 hours a day focused on this? And what do I need to give up to be able to go and do that?
Okay. Appreciate that a lot. So you quit your website back in, I think, 2010, 2011, was it, to pursue YouTube. And and even though your website was making a bunch of money, you just decided to stop doing that and then go all in on YouTube. Um, how did you figure out if the risk was going to be worth it?
I think you need to make big decisions with your heart and the small ones with the head. So I didn't know if it'd be worth it. But that's like, should I move to California, or should I marry? Like, are you seeing somebody? I'm assuming you're not married yet.
No.
It's like, so you're thinking about, like, are you going to marry somebody? How do you know if it's going to work out? Well, you don't. But your heart tells you to do it, so you do it. So it's the same thing. Like, should you go be a podcaster? How do you know if it's going to work out? Well, you don't. But you want to do it, so you go and do it. And it doesn't mean you go all in and you have to quit everything. I love small testing and, proving that the momentum is paying off. but you don't know how everything's going to work out. But if you stayed on the same path you're on, you don't know how that's going to work out either. Like if you're going to school and the path is to become a dentist versus I'm going to go be a podcaster and try to be an entrepreneur. Well, you don't know how the dentist path works out either. Will you be happy as a dentist? Probably not. Will you be happy as a podcaster? I don't know. Maybe. Nobody knows, but until you go off and do it. And so, big decisions with the heart. If you are feeling like you need to do this, then the worst thing to do is to not do it and then get to the end of your life and look back and say, man, I wish I just started that podcast. I could have just gone down the street and bought some microphones and just started. And honestly, I was just too afraid and I never started. Like that's the thing that I want to try to avoid. And so what I knew was with my website, so in terms of moving from website to YouTube, I had a website. It was growing. It was super successful. I had, 100,000 plus pages of content, working with some of the biggest names in the industry. And I just felt disconnected from the work. I didn't like doing what I was doing every day. And so if you don't like what you're doing every day, that there's no way that then doing that for the next 10 years is going to work out. Like if you don't like it now, there's no way you're going to like it in 10 years. Like it's gotten worse every day. Then imagine 10 more years of doing this. You're going to actually hate your life, right? Not just the work. And so I knew I had to move to something else. I didn't know that YouTube would be the forever thing. And it may not be the forever thing, right? I mean, in 10 years, maybe we're not on YouTube anymore. And I'm beaming into your living room in virtual reality or hologram Evan having conversation, whatever it is. But the thing that I loved the most inside of what I was doing was making videos because I'm a visual learner. I'd like to see things visually. So that became the best option. And I took my team. I don't know how many people I had at the time, 3, 4, 5, something like that. I said, okay, I'm moving to YouTube. If you want a job, like I'm happy to bring you over. We'll figure out things for you to do. And everybody came over and we started working on the YouTube channel. And luckily, I still like making videos. I'm like 10,000 plus videos in. I still like videos. I had my video training this morning inside my Movement Makers program. And now I've been doing podcasts all day and I'm talking to you and it's still fun, and I see Samuel in my calendar. I'm like, I'm excited. Let's go. And the second I look at that in my calendar, it's like, ooh, I don't know. I don't want to do this. Like this, I'm tired. I don't want to do that. Then I know I need to go and do something else. And I may not know what that next thing is, but I know that I need to do something else because the second it starts to feel like work, that's when things start to go wrong. So this might be technically work, I guess, in my calendar, but it doesn't feel like this isn't work for me. This is fun. Like I'm going to talk to Samuel. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship and life and business and wherever he wants to go. I don't know. We'll see. It'll be fun. But if it becomes work, then you've bought yourself a job and you can't stay in that situation for too long. But you never know how it's going to work out. But you do know that if you keep doing something that you hate doing, that it's not going to work out.
Yeah, that's really good. And I guess just being more in touch with how you feel doing certain things, because that really says a lot. So I know that you've mentored a lot of people and you know a lot of super successful people. What do you think is one thing that the people who are more successful do better than just regular people? Like one subtle thing.
One is belief. So the most common thing, and it's also what I look for the most. So I'm a little biased if I pick belief, but I find that that's true. The people who go off and have more success believe in themselves more, where they often come from backgrounds that don't make sense, right? Like a lot of people did not grow up doing the thing that they're doing. Their parents did not do the thing that they're doing. There's no reason for them to have success doing it. But they just had belief in themselves that they could do it and they could figure it out. Number 2 would be that they just started. Like kudos to you for just starting. You got this idea for podcast, and a week later, boom, here he is starting a podcast. Most people, again, wait years or decades before even doing anything. And so successful people start. And then if I pick a third thing, is like just the willingness to keep going. That don't watch your first podcast and look back on it and say, oh my God, I suck. That was terrible. And then quit. Well, anything you start, you're going to suck. Like if you're going to start barbecuing or making cakes or snowboarding or whatever. It's like your first meal is going to suck. Your first snowboarding trip is going to suck. Like, it doesn't mean you suck as a human. You just don't have the skills yet. And so just keep going. Like, don't give up after your first try. You get up and you keep going. Now,
Yeah.
if you do 100 episodes, like how many episodes have you done of this show?
About, I think, 45.
45. Okay, great. So you're already way better than your first one,
Yeah, for sure.
right? Like if your first one sucks, that's fine. That's normal. That's what you're supposed to do. But if your 100th episode is just as bad as your first one, okay, then you suck. Then don't do this. Like, this is not for you. Go do something else, right? But chances are you're going to learn. I've never seen somebody's 100th version of anything suck just as bad as their first.
Yeah.
And so it's the what separates successful people from everybody else. It's the self-belief. It's the willingness to get started. And then it's pushing through the suck and just keeping going until you develop the skill set.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like everyone goes through phases where they don't really have as much belief in themselves, and I've noticed I've definitely gone through that as well. What uh is there anything that you do in those times to kind of restore that belief in yourself?
Yeah, and that's an ongoing thing, right? I mean, I'm my biggest challenge is I don't believe in myself enough to do the next thing. Like you believe in yourself enough to tie your shoelace because you've done it so many times. But
Yeah,
when you were first learning how to do it, it's like, I can't do this. I don't know how to loop the thing around and make a right. But now you can do it, no problem. You don't even think about how to do it.
yeah,
Like tying a tie. I don't even remember the steps. Like I was trying to break it down for my son. Like I don't even remember. I just do it because I've done it so many times, but I don't know how to even teach it anymore. And so those things we believe in ourselves to do. But something new, getting to 100,000 downloads on your podcast is something like, oh, I don't think I can do that, or that's going to take forever, or that's not possible, right? We're getting 10 million downloads, right? The things that are in the future that are bigger, we don't believe in ourselves enough to do. The things we've already done, we know that we can do again. And so the challenge becomes, how do we cultivate belief on a regular basis so that you can go and do the thing? So for me, the best thing is through environment, habits, rituals, routines. So it's why I make the content on my channel. I profile the various famous entrepreneurs for me. I want them for me. Like, I want Steve Jobs talking to me and Oprah Winfrey talking to me, and I want these entrepreneurs talking to me every day. And the most important part of my daily routine is I wake up and I'll go for a walk, and I call it my Believe walk in the morning. Try to get sunshine on my eyes, within 15 minutes of waking up, and I'll put on one of my own videos. And that's why I make so much content, so that I have something every day to go back to and listen, because I'm talking to you. This is great, getting lots of energy. Like I'm leaving here with more energy than I came in. But then tomorrow I'm waking up and it's like starting over again. And I'm not calling Samuel to say, hey man, like let's do another show. Right? So but you need to manufacture that. So your environment has been designed to keep you where you are. And so if you change your environment and what you feed into your mind, you can start to change how you feel. And so that's why I want these famous entrepreneurial stories in my head every morning, because it helps me believe in myself a little bit more that day. Now, the thing that needs to be partnered with belief is action. You can believe in yourself, but if you don't do anything, then nothing happens, right? So it's not just about getting motivated. The motivation is the starting point to then take some kind of action, to then, if you're going to do your 3 to 4 hours a day now of work to reach out to people, bigger names to get on the show, there'll be a lot of names that you start and it's like, oh, this person's never going to say yes. This is stupid. Why am I messaging this person? There's no way they're going to even look at me. They're never going to see this. But if that's how you're approaching it, of course they'll never see it, and you won't ever even do the work. Where whatever gets you inspired, motivated, hopeful, if you felt that before you started doing your outreach, you're going to start to get different results. And so again, most people are in the no business. So like, I can't do this. And a lot of that comes back to belief, because they don't believe that they can do this. And so if you can feed your mind with things, so for me, it's famous entrepreneur stories. If it's music, if it's walking your dog, if it's yoga, if it's playing the piano, if it's having a cup of coffee, like whatever the thing is that gets you feeling to be the most bold version of you, that's what you want to put into your daily routine, so you can feel that and then go out and have a great day.
Yeah, I love that. That's definitely something that I'm gonna start doing because I think just like having a small thing in a small thing that you do every single day, kind of like your walk, that can have such a profound impact on your life. If you do that every day, because then that little thing it starts to compound.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I know we're kind of bumping up against the clock here, but um, when you can identify the thing that makes you come alive, because we've all felt it. Everybody has felt boldness and courage at some point. Well, what led to that? Were you listening to something? Were you reading a book? Were you listening to Samuel's podcast? Were you dancing? Were you like what were you doing? And then just put that as part of your daily routine, right? Like if Samuel's podcast is the thing that gets you feeling motivated, cool. He's got 40 plus more episodes to go and listen to. Start your day with him and then go listen to them back. And he's making new ones all the time, right? It's like when you identify those things, it might have been accidental. Like if you're listening to Samuel's show for the first time, maybe you came across it by accident and you were searching for me and you found this. Cool. Now don't make it accidental. Make it intentional. Plan for it so that tomorrow morning when you wake up, you get that same energy burst to give you the motivation, belief, confidence, courage to go off and have a great day.
Hell yeah, man. Love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Evan. I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. Evan here has two amazing books. Or no, you have like a lot more, but two great books that I've read. So I'm gonna be linking those plus all of your other books and your socials in the description. So if if the listeners like um, if the listeners enjoyed this podcast, they can go check you out. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'll see you later, Evan.
Thank
Hope
you,
you have a
man.
great day.
Appreciate you.